remote instrumentation science environment that we've been developing. And this is to really look at how we can do material science when manufacturing of polymers. Think of any sort of process where there is iterative steps and a combination of simulation and experiments. And so what we want to do here is show how AI techniques, essentially different types of learning algorithms, can be used in the context particularly the image analytics that's necessary to do some of these manufacturing processes. So a little bit introduction about my lab. We are a lab that does a lot of cloud computing, AI, cybersecurity, in building basically domain-specific test beds for manufacturing, healthcare, education, public safety, smart grids. And so it's a very interdisciplinary lab. And I also direct the Mizu Seri Center, which is a campus center where we work with other experts in other disciplines. And we have over 40 faculty affiliated with the center to develop, not only interdisciplinary research projects, but cutting edge infrastructure in the cloud, in AR, VR, in storage and instruments for scientific discovery. And last but not least, also do a lot of training and outreach to disseminate the research findings. So today's talk will basically build upon our work that we're doing at University of Missouri on how we can construct more intelligent workflows for scientific computing, basically, where you're looking at maybe some sort of domain science. In this case, I'm going to talk about material science, and particularly CNT synthesis as a material, which is one of the very important materials, and how we could develop these in a more efficient, sustainable manner using some sort of techniques that will improve the image analytics that's necessary in the manufacturing. And I will talk about how the kind of closed loop methods we're using in this process is actually helping develop better materials in a faster way with more sort of intentional experiments. And so I will go into some of the details of our AI methods we've developed and what sort of algorithms we are studying to improve the image analytics in the CNT manufacturing process. And then we'll talk about how we've built a realistic test bed where the AI tools drive the manufacturing process. So the material discovery is happening in some sense in a human on the loop and eventually an autonomous way where the experiment and simulation are synergistically working through the AI chatbot, right? I'll talk about what the chatbot does in making sure that we build materials that we desire with the properties we desire in a very fast and sustainable manner. So that's going to be my talk today. And let's start with what the problem we're looking at, right? So the specific domain problem we're looking for is in material science, where we develop these carbon nanotubes. And the synthesis is basically a very interesting and complex process. And if you have not understood what a carbon nanotube is in the past, it's basically a cylindrical nanostructure made up of carbon atoms. And these grow in the form of tubes, and you can see here they grow into some forests that essentially dictate the strength or the way the compression is handled and different properties that are necessary in manufacturing, right? So they have obviously remarkable properties in terms of mechanical, electrical, thermal properties, and the manufacturing is complex, but if you do the right kind of manufacturing, you can get the desired properties, and those desired properties are very important to build different materials. So if you want to imagine like where would CNTs be used, if you've seen the movie Iron Man, his Iron Man suit is basically made up of carbon nanotube, right? So it's a very important material, and to grow it requires extensive preparation and a lot of human inputs to make sure the desired formation of the CNT synthesis happens. And so if you don't understand how to really build these CNTs, you can have basically a undesirable material, right? And to really understand how to build the right material, you need to have the idea of the right set of parameters that you need to use. And the parameter space is very large in this case because there's several factors that impact the the synthesis process in this case. So in a manual setting today, what traditionally, classically people do is use a very trial and error method, again, which is not very sustainable, which is very costly, time consuming, obviously error prone, where the human is completely in the loop by getting a image of the manufacturing process stage from the electron microscope, doing some image analysis, and then having some input to then control the microscope to have the next set of image acquisition parameters, right, to continuously do this iteratively to get the desired property material. So obviously, this is pretty manual. This is, again, error prone, like we said, and you have to be in person in the lab with the instrument doing this with proprietary interfaces. And the data collection is pretty much done manually, analyzed very manually. And so the adjustments are made with sort of a lot of trial and error in this case. So it's a very inefficient process if you're not really looking at it from a more intelligent approach, where we could actually use machine learning, use the help of automation, right, to remotely instrument the experiment as well as connect it to a simulation. And the users are given more tangible outputs, right? The human experts are given more tangible outputs, which they can process and monitor and guide the next set of experiments more intelligently. So that's basically the idea of remote instrumentation. And the science is happening within this sort of remote instrumentation service ecosystem. And that's why we call it the remote instrumentation science environment, which is what I was coining our project as, where you have a number of services that are helping automation of the image analysis, image acquisition, image, parameter selection. All of that is happening through some sort of automation services, which then makes it easy for the researcher to remotely look at the results, guide it, and have a lot of help from the AI to know which exact or more tangible parameters can be used on the instrument, right, to collect the data to discover the materials in a faster way, right? So essentially, if you look at it, human becomes a part of the loop in a human on the loop manner, right, to do the process orchestration, and the ML methods are essentially driving the automation. And in this case, even a novice user, so they don't necessarily have to be an expert, they can actually do very successful experiments and synthesize CNTs, which are complex to synthesize. And then this whole remote instrumentation services streamlines the analytics and the instrument control and gives all those benefits we talked about, right, to make it more sustainable and also reduce the time and trial and error. So in a nutshell, this is sort of the research goals or aims that we're trying to achieve to solve the problem of CNT manufacturing. And so I'll go into how some of the AI methods that we're developing are helping in this case, right? So this is the workflow where the user has some initial parameters, and those parameters are essentially used to run the experiment on the microscope. And this is automated through some commands. And then the outputs in microscope, which is the images, are then analyzed. So we do some image segmentation, and then we look at a number of sort of metrics, you can say, within those image segment processed results, like orientation loss, edge coverage, average thickness, average separation distance, entropy. And so based on those metrics in the segmentation, we then use the AI-based feedback control, where we use a number of algorithms, and I'll talk about a couple of them we're looking at, and we've done more of this, but we've been looking at reinforcement learning, imitation learning. And so those agents essentially are used to look at the segmentation metrics, like these 5 metrics, and then predict what would be the best next set of parameters on the microscope. And then there is automation that is happening with human on the loop through a chatbot, and also a chatbot control on the instrument to run those experiments, right? So you can see here the monitoring is happening via the chatbot, as well as this chatbot is suggesting to the researchers the next set of ideal parameters to then put on the instrument. So based on this sort of a closed loop system, we can do what we call as real-time image collection guidance, right, using AI. And that can actually be very effective, especially in these cases of the CNT manufacturing and similar other manufacturing process where we don't get a lot of data sets to do very extensive machine learning based training and inference, right? So using a limited data set, how can we still have the agents be trained to identify the right set of parameters is obviously the more interesting innovation and the challenge here. And based on this sort of, as I said, segmentation results, we know through the machine learning approaches here, what sort of metrics would be best to guide the next set of ideal images that would help create this ideal CNT material properties, right? So here is a little bit more on the two methods. So one method is the reinforcement learning method that we have developed, which is a very essential method here because we don't have a lot of data, and so